everyone. My name is Katrina. I'm a medical student at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine Public Health. And tonight I'm here with Jameson, an individual in our community who is going through his long-term recovery journey. We'd like to specifically thank Jameson for volunteering to be interviewed and sharing his story with all of you. The goal is to help others in the community through their recovery journey as Jameson shares his journey. So thank you for joining me today, Jameson. First question I'd like to ask is, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? What do you like to do? And what do you like to do for fun?
Okay. The journey's a little extensive. I was born in Georgia at Fort Gordon Army Base. So my biological father and my mother, they were married at the time and they divorced shortly thereafter. He went to Germany and Vietnam. And by the time I was 2, they were already divorced and my mother and I moved back to Wisconsin. So I primarily grew up in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, which is right at the base of Door County. Mm-hmm. And I still visit there often because I have a lot of relatives. My parents still have a house there. And then went to college at UW-Whitewater. Attended Elkhorn High School before UW-Whitewater because we moved. And then I've been teaching in Janesville, Wisconsin for the past, I think it's going to be 24 years this year. For fun, I do a lot of coaching. I coach football, basketball, girls soccer, and I'll help with wrestling from time to time. To go golfing, I have a Harley Davidson that I ride quite a bit. I just bought it this year. I call it my wind therapy. I work on cars from time to time. I like to go to the beach. I like to travel. I started going to concerts again within the last year once COVID's gotten done, because I haven't done that in a long time, and I really enjoy doing that too. So I have to read. What else? That's about it for right now.
That sounds awesome.
Okay.
What was the last concert you went to?
I went to Blue October in end of September down at the House of Blues in Chicago. And I actually went with somebody that I hadn't seen in 30 years. So it was, I don't know, some people think karma, serendipity, all those types of things, and we had a great time. It was very fun. Great show. Because also the lead singer of Blue October, he's in recovery too. And I think he's coming up in 8 or 9 years of sobriety. So a lot of his music I can relate to. And, it's like I said, I like the Harley's therapy. So is music for me. I listen to a lot of music.
That's awesome to hear. Very cool. Thanks for sharing, Jameson. Next question is, why did you want to do this interview?
A lot of the AA in the program itself, and we were just talking about this last week, is they say in order to keep your sobriety, you got to give it away, or you don't get. And like, there's a song from the Bodeans too that and it says you don't get much without giving. So if I don't give away what's worked for me, because what's worked for me isn't necessarily going to work for somebody else. But like if one person can see this and they said, if this guy can do it, I can do it. I never thought this was actually possible when I started on this journey in January of 2018. So I'll share whatever I can, and hopefully someone sees this information and think, what, I can do it too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. At this point, would you mind telling us a little bit about your story and your journey and how it began, and maybe then up until the journey started?
Okay. So when you speak about recovery, usually at an AA meeting, I did my first speaker meeting this last year. The kind of the formula is, what did I used to be like? What happened, and what I'm like now? I would say growing up in northeastern Wisconsin, most family gatherings had alcohol around them, things like that. And then, if you had older brothers or sisters when you're in middle school, they would have parties and you get to go to parties, but never any serious drinking. In high school when I moved, I wasn't a polite way to put it is I was very unhappy about moving to Elkhorn, Wisconsin from where I grew up. I was involved in lots of activities, sports, friends, and I had to start back over again. And it wasn't an easy transition for me, being the oldest kid in my family and having to make all new friends. So high school, started drinking quite a bit there too. Like we talked about earlier, college, I did get my first DWI when I was 20 years old. It would have been 1992. And there was consequences for that, probation, lost my license. And then I didn't get in really any trouble for drinking again until about 25 years later. I continued to drink, all the way through college, weekends teaching and things like that. And I got pulled over in 2016, and that was a pretty good wake-up call because actually my son was in the car with me, and I was very lucky, as they would say, that I did not receive a felony. I didn't even get a drunk driving for the ticket. I got a reckless driving, but after that incident was when I really tried to slow down my drinking, stop my drinking, and it was a struggle for quite some time. And then I also was arrested in my house in not 2019, yeah, March of 2019. I'd been drinking that day. My wife called me out on it. Kids called me out on it. Got very frustrated, threatened to hurt myself in front of my family. At that time, my wife called the police. Police came to my house. I was arrested because I threatened to hurt myself. I spent the night in jail. And that still wasn't my lowest of my low. I stayed sober, I think, for 90 days after that incident. And then there were some issues at home, so I moved out. And during the separation, I started drinking again. And because of that, I was on the road to lose my job, lose pretty much everything. So I checked into Rogers in Oconomowoc on October 7th, 2019, and that's my sober date. And I stayed there for 6 days. And for some reason at that time, it really clicked. I don't know, I was kind of a veteran when I went in there because I had some AA in me. And a lot of the people that were in there for treatment haven't heard some of the things I heard. So that's when I started sharing it. And I think maybe that was just what I needed to do. And it was my treatment. I thought it was great. I didn't regret a minute of being there. And then obviously, so ever since then, I've been going to AA 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. I did some therapy after I got out. I'm still doing therapy, but not as much with someone that works in ATODA. And yeah, so that's kind of my path quickly summed up, and kind of what's happened to me in the last few years.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I'd also like to acknowledge to everyone watching this that it's around that 2 years. So we'd like to congratulate Jameson on his 2-year sober anniversary. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Next question is, what has especially been helpful along the way? What's also been less helpful?
If I would give anybody any advice about my experience, is ask for help, pick up the phone. The old adage is the phone weighs 10,000 pounds when you try to pick it up, but and then once you have it up to your ear and you hear everything, it feels like a feather. So pick up the phone, call somebody, talk to somebody. Whether or not you feel you're unique, there's somebody out there that's been through what you've been through, or even worse than you've been through. And just you got to find your people, you got to find your tribe, as some they would say. Some people go to AA. There's other programs out there that help with that. Sometimes you need to go outside of a support group, maybe see a doctor. They might prescribe you some medicine, but I would definitely reach out, because I relapsed several times in my first year and a half, almost 2 years, because I always thought I could take care of it myself, deal with it myself. I wouldn't ask for help. But after I went to treatment and I started calling people, talking to people, maybe sticking around, making some friends in AA, for me was what worked. And I think that was my secret. You can't continue to try to solve all your problems on your own. A lot of people say, you share your problem, it's got somebody else that's cut in half. So, if you can give me a good reason to, if you want to give me a good reason why you should drink, I'll buy you your first one, because there is no really good reason to start to drink again. So, yeah, AA's been a big factor in my life. And, I've even stayed in touch, even though they don't recommend it from some people from treatment. 2 years, a couple of us, we've all stayed sober. And I think maybe that might have been a big factor for all the 3 of us to continue our success too.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's awesome. Besides members of AA, is there anyone else who's particularly have been helpful in your journey and supporting you and walking with you over the years? Is there someone in particular that you remember or really appreciate?
Obviously my parents, put them in some difficult situations, but they've always been there regardless to help pick up the pieces, whether or not they've been happy with me or not, or disappointed. They told me they were quite disappointed in me a few times since 2016. My coworkers, I've worked with a lot of people. Well, the people that I've worked with, let's say it like this, I've worked with for quite some time, most of them over 15 years. So, when your friends start saying, hey, you get to work one day, you smell like alcohol, or you're not yourself, or you're grumpy every day till 10 o'clock in the morning, you know, you respect their opinion, and it means a lot. So, I've leaned on my friends and, my immediate family quite a bit. Um, the relationship with my wife and I it's pretty strained after the arrest in 2019, and especially after I went to treatment. I lived at home for a year after I went to treatment. So from 2019 to 2020, wow, I stayed at home for a year, and then things were not getting better. So I filed for divorce, and my divorce was final last September. So basically, on my 1 year sobriety birthday, I filed for divorce, and then on my second sobriety birthday, I was divorced. So um, it's been a difficult path to say the least, but through COVID, divorce, moving, I've stayed sober through all of it. So those are some pretty tough things to deal with. And then also the relationship with my kids has been non-existent since I moved out, which is very strange because I was very involved in a lot of things they did. I was kind of like the Mr. Mom at the house. This is what my wife would call me. So yeah, you got to lean on people. You got to ask for help. If you don't, things aren't going to go very well. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, you've been through a lot in the last year. If there was someone going through similar or different but equally challenging, what advice do you have to stay committed through such challenging times?
If you're already sober, I would definitely recommend, if you were going to meetings, keep going to meetings. If you're doing therapy, go to therapy. All the things that have worked for you, I would, make those mainstays. They say meeting makers make it. So whether you're going to Al-Anon or, for something for heroin. We have quite a few people that aren't just in AA for alcohol. I don't think people realize that there's a lot of people that have dual addictions. Some people aren't even alcoholics. They might have been, an heroin addict or something like that. And the groups that I meet with are all very welcoming to some of those, but some of the older gentlemen sometimes aren't real receptive to people that might have an addiction to, a substance other than alcohol. And that's tough sometimes. But yeah, if you have difficult situations, you really got to lean on what works for you, and continue to do that. And if you don't, if you get outside the pack, the old adage is, if you have a bunch of animals in a pack and you stick together, you're usually going to make it. If you get on the outside of the pack and start floating away, you're going to get pegged off by something else, something that's hunting you, or something of that nature. It's always a kind of a cool little metaphor that makes a lot of sense, and it's very true, I believe. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. How has your life been different than you would have imagined?
Well, as you can see, I'm living in the upstairs of an upper house. This isn't bragging or anything like that, but due to the fact of getting divorced, we had just built a parade home, and so the parade home is gone. We no longer live there, so it's a very different environment as far as living goes. For the year before that, I lived in this apartment. I lived with a coworker who I was actually his teacher in elementary school, and now I work with him. I was his coach in middle school, so and also I don't have any placement of my children's living with me right now, because they're 15, 17, and 19, and I didn't want to put them through the struggle of a custody battle since they're that age, hoping that they would come around, and they have not come around. So that's been very different. I'm strictly by myself. It's very lonely. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, it's been the kind of the new struggle, is just kind of, I don't know, just finding things to do so you don't do something that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
on that similar thread, what are things that you live for and that you like to do now?
Oh, well, like riding the Harley. I put about 12,000 miles on it this summer, which is quite a bit. But I ride up to Two Rivers. I do, I go there. I can walk to the beach in about 6 minutes from my parents' house. So I'll go up there, and on the weekend I'll take a book to the beach and sit and relax, or I'll help my dad with things, or I have some cousins and aunts and uncles up there. I do a lot of Harley riding. Listen to a lot of music. I coach. Just try to stay active. Try not to stay cooped up too long inside. Try not to isolate, I guess, is the key. To get out and do things. It's just hard when you can't do things with your immediate family. So, and other people with families are busy from time to time. So it's like sometimes you feel like kind of a third wheel asking people if you can do things with them. So, it's a delicate fine line of finding things to do, but try not to be too lonely either while you're doing that. So yeah, those are some of the things that I like to do now. Because I'm sober, I get to do those.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. What about in the winter when you can't ride your Harley?
Well, that's pretty easy too. I have snowmobiles.
Okay.
So,
Winter
so
Harley.
yeah. So I have snowmobiles. I haven't ridden them in the last few years because I live in southern Wisconsin, and just with moving and things. So now that I'm single again, and my brother rides, and one of my really good friends rides. So there's plenty of places to go and do that, and going through the woods in the wintertime and snow is falling, and it's a full moon. It's very, very cool to in the wintertime to do that. And then I coach basketball at the middle school, and I just continue to work out. I supervise a lot of athletic events because I'm the athletic director at my school. And yeah, that's pretty much how I stay busy in the wintertime right there.
That sounds very busy.
Yes.
Can you tell me about one of your happiest moments?
Happiest moments. Well, my children were born is pretty amazing. The fact that they were healthy. That's always a nervous time when you're going to be a parent. But yeah, it was pretty phenomenal to have 3 healthy kids, and they're awesome kids. They really are. I'm very proud of them. But yeah, that was a very happy time. A lot of good memories from growing up. Sports memories. Hanging out with family. My mom's family is pretty big. My dad's family is pretty big. So picnics, weddings. I enjoy family activities. Being around that type of thing. So yeah, I have a lot. My life wasn't very traumatic looking back on it now. I maybe thought it was, like moving from 8th grade to my high school years, but there was a lot of good things that happened in high school too that I never really took the time to focus on until these last few years. And I wish I would have taken some time growing up to enjoy accomplishments, but usually it was like, okay, I did this. This was on my list. On to the next thing, instead of smelling the roses, as they would say. And hindsight's always 2020, but I can look back now and realize that there's a lot of good stuff that happened too.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are hopes for your future?
Reconnect with my kids is by far the only thing that really matters right now. Continue to take care of myself, do the things I need to do to stay sober. I actually attended a meeting last week outside of the Janesville area, and since I've been going to AA, I haven't gone to any other groups. That I would have been the new guy. And last Friday I was the new guy, and it was pretty cool. It went well. Nice, it's a men's meeting, but it's ironically, I went with a buddy from high school that I used to drink with, and he's got almost 20 some years. And I just reconnected about a month ago with a friend from high school, and he's just hit year 3, and he lives in Michigan now. And we've been chatting a little bit, but what was the question again? I lost my train of thought there. Started talking. One of
No,
my
that's
buddies.
right. Actually, I have another question relating to that. What does it feel like to be the new guy at the AA meeting?
I read something. What was it, last spring? I wasn't sure if it was Nelson Mandela, and he had Mandela, and I think his father was the leader of a tribe or something. I could be wrong. And there was like 5 rules his dad said about being a good leader, and one of them was be the last to talk. So a lot of time, at AA goes around the room, and you can pass obviously, but a lot of times now I'll pass and just say, at the end of the meeting, if I have something to add to the topic. And that's kind of what I did last Friday too. Just kind of sit and listen to see what everyone has to say, get a feel for the group. And you don't have to talk, but if I kind of take that approach, usually works out pretty well for me lately, because I have a hard time not asking questions when people are talking. Like in the summertime, the guys I work with, if we're talking about something or they are, I have to raise my hand. I just can't start talking and and butt in right away because I want to know. I want my questions usually answered right away, and I have all kinds of questions about all kinds of things all the time. So yeah, just finding a calmness and just waiting and listening. That's been a big deal when you're in new situations for me anyway. Because I'm kind of a nervous person, not as bad as I used to be, but that's a skill I really like, and I'm glad I saw it. It's been very helpful.
Yeah. So if you had advice, or if you were going to talk to someone that is thinking about going to AA meeting, but nervous and worried about what it's going to be like, what would you have to say to them?
Someone that's planning on going to one.
Yeah, that has
Here's
not gone
here's
yet.
here's my advice, and some people don't agree with it, but I feel a lot of times when new people come in, because they'll always go, is this anybody's first time to this meeting? And they'll ask, is this anybody's first time to an AA meeting? And I think in my view anyway, this is my opinion, obviously. I would say when you go to a meeting first, don't say it's your first AA meeting, and don't say it's your first time at that meeting, because what happens is they do a first step meeting, and then they kind of go around the room and talk about because the first step is I'm powerless over alcohol, and my life is unmanageable. So everyone kind of says how they were powerless and what was going on with their lives. And then sometimes it comes back around to the new person, and they're so freaked out that they don't really know what to say or how much they should share. I mean, just to walk through the doors in the first place and sit down in a room, if you don't know anybody, I mean, usually sometimes there's somebody there that you might have known, or because when you walk through the doors, your life, there's a lot of things going wrong. If you're coming to an AA meeting, you just say, oh, hey, I'm drinking too much right now. Things are going, yeah, the future doesn't look so great. I better go stop drinking. Usually come through the doors, you're pretty beat down and you got your tail between your legs. I would recommend just sitting and listening. And then if you do have something to share at an AA meeting, and when it comes to you, just say your name. You don't have to say you're an alcoholic. You can just say, hey, I'm Jameson. I'm here tonight, and I would just like to listen. And that I'll pass. And that's the advice I'd give to someone. I think it's just a little overwhelming sometimes, because they also, when they're telling how they got there, they're pretty much focusing it towards you. So a lot of people, they'll talk and they'll look at you, they'll talk at you. And that's one of the things that I try not to do. If they do a first step meeting, is I try not to look at the person and focus on them. I just try to focus on myself and what I've been through, and maybe that'll help them. That's what I would recommend. You probably hear something very different from an old timer, but that's what I would like if I was going to an AA meeting my first time.
Gotcha. Thank you. This second to last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
It's funny, you just had this conversation with somebody on Saturday when we were golfing. Usually if you're a good person, you pass away, everyone talks about you. Oh, you remember this time, or when he coached me, you did this. Or the way I want to be remembered is I want people to talk about me and say nice things about me before I die. I think that would be the biggest compliment, that people aren't afraid to say that I've done some good things. They don't have to wait till I die to say them, I guess. So I guess that's, and obviously to answer the question, if I was passed away, I think I would just, as a good dad, I cared about kids. I cared about, I care about the little guy. I mean, I know I get along very good with all the, the athletes and the smart kids, but a lot of times I'll go out of my way for the kid that just needs a chance, or maybe someone is going to put him on his team, or, their home life isn't great, something like that. That's how I would remember, just that I accepted everybody, no matter what their strengths or faults were. I think that's the best thing, that, and being a good dad, if I could have those two things accomplished when it's time to move on to the next or whatever, I think that'd be pretty good.
That's great. And this last question is, if there's any wisdom you'd like to share with those who haven't found their way out of addiction yet, now is a great time to share them.
That's a good question. There's a lot of pretty good sayings that people use. One of them is, you can drink or use. Oh, how does it go again? You can drink or have everything else. So if you want to drink, you can drink. If you want to use, you can use. But if you stop doing it, you can have everything else that you probably want in your life. You spend your whole addiction focusing on one thing, and if you give up that one thing, you can focus on everything else. And it's tough. It's hard. I mean, it's like I said earlier, you really you can't do it alone as much as you think you can. Because look, if you're struggling, with whatever you're struggling with, look where it's gotten you right now, trying to deal with it by yourself. It's tough too, because and some people think if they relapse, you know, people aren't going to give up on you. Any treatment group, when you go in there, everybody in that room wants you to be successful. They don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you use again. They don't want to see you drink again. And I don't think there's too many places you can go anywhere in this world where everybody, when you walk in the door, wants the best thing possibly for you. I mean, if you're on a team, someone wants to, get your job, or if you're working, someone wants to do what you're doing better, that type, or even if you're driving down the road, someone wants to drive faster than you. When you're in a recovery group, and the recovery groups that I've been in, every single person in there, some of them are going to be upset with you if you relapse and you come back. Some people are going to say, I hope you're miserable. And other people are going to say, welcome back. We're glad you're done with your research and development. Welcome back to the group, because usually the research and development doesn't go so well. But yeah, I mean, really, you got to find, there's so many things out there these days that can help with addiction. And you just got to find the one that works for you. And the same thing, I might be in an AA meeting, the way I did my recovery might be different than the next 4 people that are sitting right down the road from me. But we have one thing in common: we're all at the meeting, we're all talking about it, and we all can share our experiences, because there's so many people that have the same experiences as us, even though we don't think anybody's ever done what we've done. And there's so many people out there that have done what I've done, and I think that's important to know. And like a lot of people, when you say, you surrendered. Well, if you were surrendering with your addiction, the battle's over. You don't have to fight anymore. It's time to move on to the next best thing. And that's hopefully living a sober life. It's not going to be easy. We have people come and go quite often, but it's those, the people that people that get their 30-day coin, 60-day coin, 90-day coin. I never even thought I could pull that off. And now I'm at 2 years plus almost another month, and it gets better. It's better every day, but you got to keep doing all the things that people recommend in your group too. You can't just go to meetings. You got to live it too. That's the big thing. You got to go outside the doors and live life, and try to use the things, the advice, the wisdom that they're sharing with you, and put it into play. Because if you just go to meetings and hide inside the walls and don't live, eventually, in my opinion, that's not a great way to live, and you might end up using again. Gotta get out and see the world, man. Gotta enjoy the opportunity to be given now that you're sober, and not effing up all the time. Is what I would say.
Well, Jameson, thank you so much for spending the evening sharing your story. I know I really valued hearing it, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are going to appreciate and learn and hear your advice, and really thank you for it. So we appreciate you being here, and wish you the best of luck in the future.
All right. Thank you.